Glad you did. I know I am. Ocala Aviation. Call today, 861-7484.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala.
All right, 5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Not a bad-looking Monday morning. Hope you're doing well. I have among my possessions, I have some religious things that are family heirlooms, I guess you would say. They're not valuable as far as that will go. No pawn shop would care to have them. But little things like, a cross that my mother had and things of that sort. Maybe you've got something similar. It's not unusual, really, for us as human beings to want to collect things that have some sentimental meaning, especially if it is somehow connected to our religion, our beliefs. Peter Manseau is on the phone. My gosh, this is such an awesome book. It's called Objects of Devotion. If you're looking at the streaming broadcast, the podcast, whatever you call the thing on the internet, I put the cover of the book on there so you could see it. He's not in the studio. The subtitle, Religion in Early America. So while we've seen many objects of devotion, for example, from early times, Egyptian times, etc., this is specifically early America. Peter is the Lilly Endowment Curator of American Religious History at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. He's also the recipient of the National Jewish Book Award, the National Endowment for the Arts Literature Fellowship, and he's a contributor to the New York Times, the Atlantic, and the Wall Street Journal. So it's quite an honor to have him on our show. Peter Manseau, good morning. Manseau, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on the air with us. Where are you calling from?
From Washington, D.C., from my office in the Smithsonian.
All right. Well, thank you for doing this. And I'm wondering if it told you anything about us that maybe we didn't know before when you were doing the research for this.
Well, it really told me that religion in early America, it was as complex and diverse as religion is today. Maybe not including all of the same groups we would consider part of American religious diversity today, but the same questions would arise of how communities that believe wildly different things, how are we going to get together and form a common nation? That's what it really taught me. And I should say that the book is the book version of an exhibit that's opening just this month here in Washington at the National Museum of American History. And so if any of your listeners are in Washington for the next year, I hope they'll come in and see it.
Oh, my gosh, I would love to see it. And the objects of devotion, I mean, they range. A Bible is an object of devotion, obviously. And so that you have some old Bibles in here, some old just clips of paper, handwritten things. Where do all these things come from?
Well, they come from a variety of places. Some of them are objects just from families, and the personal objects of families, when looked at very closely, can be a way to tell a much bigger national story. And other objects that we have in the exhibit are more closely associated with famous people from American history. So, for example, we have an 800-pound church bell made by Paul Revere.
Wow.
Yes, most people know the story of Paul Revere and his midnight ride. That's what we learned in school.
Right.
But during his lifetime, Revere was very well known as a church bell maker, in fact. And so we were able to collect one of these bells for the exhibit and, of course, include it very prominently in the book.
Wow.
And the fascinating thing about all of these objects is they each tell a story about a particular moment in American history. So with the Revere bell, for example, we know from the diaries of ministers in New England at the time that they knew if they went to Europe they could get a nicer sounding bell. But right after the Revolution, they wanted to buy a Paul Revere bell to show that they were patriots.
Oh, that is interesting. So there's more to it than the story behind the objects makes it more interesting. So tell me about some of the other things. One of the things I remember hearing about, and I think you've got it in the book, is the Jefferson Bible. We've had discussions about the fact that he decided this doesn't belong in there, and he would cut things out. He made his own Bible.
That's right. During his retirement at Monticello, Jefferson spent a lot of time reading Christian scripture and thinking about how to align his Enlightenment ideals with the Christian heritage which he saw himself a part of. And so he decided he would go through the New Testament with a penknife. and cut out those parts that were particularly relevant to him. And for him, these were the life story of Jesus and the teachings, the parables of Jesus, and to leave everything else out. So he took those pieces that he liked and he pasted them together into a new book that he called The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth. And this was for him the truest expression of what being a Christian meant to him, following the example of Jesus. So he made this into his own book.
That is interesting.
And fascinatingly about this during his life, he didn't want anyone to know about it. In letters he told only a very few trusted friends, and we only found out about it later on by going through his correspondence and discovering that, in fact, this book actually existed, and the Smithsonian was able to acquire it.
That is fascinating. Do you know the one thing that I've always kind of wondered about is human nature regarding religious objects? Because if I knew how to take a chisel and a hammer and carve a piece of granite into an angel or into a statue of a religious figure, Jesus or Moses or anything, all of a sudden that rock, which was just a big rock, is now somehow, I don't want to say worshipped, but kind of the one step back from being worshipped. It's amazing how an object becomes adored, or you know what I mean? That I've always found that interesting. Maybe a painting is a good example. Paintings are hung up all over. They're treated with reverence, as if they themselves have some religious value.
Well, particularly when we're talking about handmade objects, something that someone has carved by hand or chiseled or painted by hand, what we can see in the creation of that object is the faith of the person who has spent so many hours creating it. So they are regarded as, for some, channels or pathways towards accessing the divine. But when you look at them just in terms of human effort, that's what they really are significant for, as examples of what someone would do, how someone would spend their time to create this object.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't part of American history, but the Statue of David, it's a picture. It's a statue of a naked man, but because it's David, it's got higher value. It's different than if it was just a naked man.
That's true. And of course, down around all throughout the Caribbean, there's a long tradition of the carving of santos. It's a similar idea where you take just a very basic product, just wood. Often they were carved from driftwood that would wash up on shores, but through the application of many hours and an artist's ability, they would become these beautiful objects that would be venerated by thousands.
We, as the new country that we were in the beginning, left behind some of the old ways, lifestyles. Did we do the same thing with religion? Did the religious traditions change because we were now under a different kind of a constitution, different mindset?
They did from the very earliest times, even before the founding of the nation and the establishment of religious freedom. Religious traditions brought from Europe were transformed just through the experience of being in a new place, in a new land. An example of this is the oldest book, the first book published in the English colonies. This is a book called the Bay Psalm Book, an edition of the Book of Psalms that was published in Massachusetts in 1640. And the interesting thing about this book, and not only that it was published there with printing materials that were brought on a ship from England very early, but that this community did not want to use the same translation of the Psalms that they had used before they crossed the Atlantic. For some reason, the act of creating new words, creating a new scripture that they would use was important to them and was reflective of their understanding of having new challenges in a new land.
The book also tells me something that I never knew, that Thomas Jefferson actually was also a reader of the Quran.
Yes, he was. Jefferson bought a copy of the Quran while he was a law student in Williamsburg, Virginia, and owned it throughout his life. And in fact, today his copy of the Quran is part of the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress was founded early in the 19th century based on books that Jefferson sold to the federal government, and his copy of the Quran went with it. And this is an interesting view into a forgotten part of American history. Not only were founders such as Jefferson interested in Islam as a global religious system, but at the time there were many Muslims in America. Some scholars estimate that about 20% of enslaved Africans brought to America, both to colonial America and to the early United States, had some connection to Islam when they arrived. And in the book, as well as in the exhibit, we have an example of this, a document written by an enslaved Muslim early in the 19th century in Arabic that was written to pass along some basic elements of the faith to the coming generations.
Is that the Balali document? Is that one?
This is called the Balali document. It was written on Sapelo Island off the coast of Georgia early in the 19th century. And many people in his situation, in fact, most of them eventually were converted to Christianity. But early on, you see efforts to maintain the faith despite these very dire circumstances they were in.
Do you know what I often wondered, and I wondered if it surfaces in your research, with the founding people who came here seeming to be so concerned about being right in God's eyes, how did they justify slavery? How did that make sense to them, knowing what the Bible teaches? It doesn't seem. I mean, not that the Bible doesn't document slavery back in biblical times, but it doesn't seem like at least the teachings of Jesus would have made anybody comfortable with owning another human being.
Oh, certainly. And for that reason, you find religious arguments for and against slavery from the very earliest moments. The abolitionism was largely a Christian movement, but you find many Christian writers who use the Bible to support slavery as well, and they point to evidence of slavery throughout the Bible. And so a book like the Bible contains so much information and so many stories that you can point to parts of it to make your argument, even for something as horrific as slavery.
In modern times, it depends on who you talk to, but religion surfaces mostly at funerals, at the beginning of life, maybe baptisms, at holidays. You know, it surfaces. Not that it's not part of our lives all the time, and it depends on who you talk to. Was it more a part of the daily life back in early America?
It was in certain ways. If you look back at religion in colonial America, you would actually find that only something like 17% of people actually belonged to a church. And this had much to do with the fact that it was a largely rural nation. It was hard to get to houses of worship. And yet, in other ways, religion was embedded all through life. An example of that that we include in the book is a children's letter book, a book of the alphabet that teaches the alphabet with Bible stories. The Bible was something that was just part of daily education. It was not something that only was looked at on Sundays. It was a part of daily life. And you can find similar examples in terms of the toys children might have played with. There was a whole variety of toys that were known as Sunday toys. These were the toys that Christian children were allowed to play with on Sundays. On Sundays, if you wanted to play, you needed to play with something that had some biblical reference. So Noah's Ark play sets, for example, were very popular, and a beautiful one is included in the book,
really?
hand carved in 1820, given by a father to his daughter to pass on this biblical story, but in a very playful way.
Another part of our history that is hard to imagine being justified if we were as religious as we think we were in our early days is the genocide against the American Indians, the removal of them. Here where I'm talking to you from in Ocala, Florida, we've got a few statues of some of the Indians who were here, Osceola being one of them, who were basically forced to move out to Oklahoma after having lived here for hundreds of years, their ancestors.
Yes, and it's in fact the removal of Native Americans is really when the conversion of Native Americans begins. Up until that point, Native Americans had their own traditions in the southeast United States, but with Indian removal in the 1830s, that's when the mass conversion of those particular tribes actually begins. And
is their religion represented in the book? I know they had multiple religions or religious beliefs, but is any of that represented in the book, objects of devotion?
It is, in a few ways, in fact. One way is through the story I just mentioned, this conversion of Native Americans. So we include in the book a Cherokee hymnal, a Christian hymnal in the Cherokee language that would have been used on the Trail of Tears during the process of removing Indians and also trying to convert them. But the other part of the story we tell is that even before Christianity arrives in America, religion in various forms was embedded in Native American life. And one way we tell that story in the book is through the inclusion of stickball sticks. Stickball is a Cherokee and Creek game that in the northern colonies later becomes the game of lacrosse. So it seems very much only to be a sport, but in fact it was played as a ritual reenactment reenacting the struggle between good and evil. It was played under the observance of a shaman, and it was as much a religious ritual as it was an athletic pastime.
We haven't brought up Judaism at all. Tell me about the Judaism in early America.
Sure. So Jews are in early America as early as the 1650s, arriving in New Amsterdam. A community of them arrived from Brazil. These are a group of Dutch Jews who settled for a while in Brazil and then needed to leave there when the Portuguese Inquisition comes across the Atlantic, and they try to find safe haven in New Amsterdam, which later becomes New York. In the book and the exhibit, we tell the story of this community through a Torah scroll that also has its history wrapped up in the American Revolution. During the British occupation of Manhattan in 1776, most of the Jewish community, who were patriots, who supported independence, they left the city, and Hessian soldiers working with the British occupied their synagogue in Manhattan, Shearith Israel. And as they were leaving, they set it on fire and, in fact, damaged one of their Torah scrolls.
Oh, wow.
The community managed to save this scroll. You can still see the burn marks from 1776, and we include that in both the exhibit and the book.
Oh, wow. It's fascinating. This is such a well-done book. Peter Manseau wrote this and put this together. It's published by the Smithsonian. Really a high-quality work. I'm guessing this took a long time. It's called Objects of Devotion, Religion in Early America. I want to take a little break, but I want to come back, Peter, so we'll just hang in there. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Source, WOCA. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. A mix of sun and clouds with a heavy thunderstorm moving from the coast to inland for the afternoon hours. The high 83 to 87, and a shower thunderstorm into the evening tonight, a low 74 to 78. Tomorrow looks rather cloudy. Again, a shower thunderstorm, especially in the afternoon inland, a high of 86 to 89. Shower thunderstorm for Wednesday, high 86 to 90. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Maggie Johnson.
If you find an animal or a bird that needs help, call Animist Foundation at 352-843-6379. They will come and get the animal if you can't take it to them. High school students and those with court-ordered community service can earn required hours in this rewarding environment. And veterans who share a bond with animals and parents who have been through mental or physical trauma are especially welcomed. Families, clubs, and tourists can arrange for tours of Animist without driving for hours or miles. Consider volunteering. Animist needs you.
Here's what you may have missed on the John Tesh Radio Show.
Number 2 on the summer danger list is trampolines. Yeah. Try to get insurance if you have a trampoline in your house. Time to amp up our brain power. And did you know that taking an afternoon nap can make you smarter? Only post one picture of your dog, your baby, or a sunset, not a series. Pulitzer Prize-winning photojournalist David Hume Kennerly says, quote, I get annoyed when people post 10 pictures of their cat when one would have been enough.
Intelligence for your life on the John Tesh Radio Show. Don't miss this stuff.
Let's cruise somewhere different. Carol's Trips is planning a 7-day California cruise from October 15th to October 22nd, round trip from San Francisco aboard the Grand Princess cruise ship. For details and arrangements, call Carol's Trips 352-787-9253 or visit carols-trips.com. Onboard credits available for veterans. It's time to go.
All right, 23 minutes after 10 o'clock. Wow, thank you for tuning in. Peter Manseau is on the phone. He is the author of the book Objects of Devotion, Religion in Early America. Peter, during the break, I just happened to open up to the page about Martha Washington's Bible, and I know very little about Martha Washington, but right in the very first paragraph, there's a quote from her: "The good Christian will submit without repining to the dispensations of divine providence," or as the second half of the sentence. The first half is, "when the mind is deeply afflicted by those irreparable losses which are indecent to humanity." So she had lost her husband, I guess. Not George Washington, but I guess her second husband, according to this. I just find that stuff fascinating.
Yes, so she was a woman who knew much suffering in her life and daily read the Bible to find her way through. In fact, the Bible we include in the exhibit in the book was the Bible that George Washington gave to her shortly after his inauguration. And as a counterpart to it, we also include the Bible that George Washington used to take his first oath of office on. So the very book that he put his hand on as he became the first president of the United States.
And that in and of itself, when a piece of an object of devotion, as the book is called, is used for something like that, it has a different level of reverence. We learned that with the inauguration of President Obama. I think with President Trump too. Didn't they use historically significant Bibles?
They did, and it's become a tradition to use the Bibles that other presidents have used. And the interesting thing about that is that Washington's use of the Bible was really an afterthought to his first inauguration. It was only at the very last moment when they were about to do the swearing, they said, well, we really should have a Bible for this to make it a solemn occasion. And a member of the local Masonic Hall, a Masonic temple, said, well, we have a very nice Bible right down the street. This is in New York City at Federal Hall, which was the first Capitol building. So the Masons went to retrieve their Bible. Washington used it, and that temple, the Masonic temple, has kept it ever since. And they make it available whenever a president wants to use it for his oath of office.
It's just fascinating to me, the objects of devotion. We had some gavels from the Masons. I think one gavel or two gavels came into town. And people from town went to see the gavel. Just it's funny, huh? How we put in significance or importance onto physical things, tangible things.
I think that we do that because they are a direct connection to the past. We know that someone significant to either our personal memory or our national memory has stood in the presence of this object, has often touched this object. And so just by being in the presence of it, that becomes the nearest we can get to those who are gone.
Is the display in the Smithsonian called Objects of Devotion?
The display here in the museum is called Religion in Early America, and it covers roughly 1630 to 1830, so 200 years of these objects that different communities have treasured, and now we have the opportunity to see them all together.
Wow, and I'm guessing they were prized possessions of whoever it was that owned them at one time.
They were. They all were. And what I think now is really the power of an exhibit like this is many people will come to the exhibit or will buy the book Objects of Devotion and look for some representation of their own community, their own identity. Yeah. And they'll certainly find that. But the true power, once you're looking through the book or standing in the exhibit space, is to see the ways that these objects are all part of the same story. Even if they represent very different traditions, they're all part of a larger story of American religious history.
George Washington's christening robe is in the book. Oh, my gosh. Well, I guess I'm just as much intrigued as the rest of the country is. Peter, thank you for being on the air. I have a copy. This is such a beautiful hardcover, beautiful, heavy book. Call me if you want the copy that was sent to me. I'll give it to you. It'll be on Patsy's desk waiting for you. I can only give away one, so call right now. The rest of us have to go buy it. Peter, can you direct us to a website so we can buy the book?
Oh, they can certainly buy it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anywhere they buy books. It should be nationally distributed, so it shouldn't be difficult to find.
I'm sure it is. Let me give this one away. Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this? Good morning. Yeah, who is this? Tell me your name. Tell me your name. Oh, yeah. Okay, I couldn't hear that person. Peter, that's live radio for you. Boy, that sounds like an echo chamber. Peter, thank you for being on the air with us today, and just thank you. That was an awesome interview. It's an awesome book.
My pleasure. If you're ever in Washington, please say hello.
I definitely want to come up. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Peter. All right, we will take a little break. We will be right back.
Whether you're building it up or knocking it down, get it done, rent it now. Sunbelt Rentals is here to make your job a little easier. Our knowledgeable staff will help you find the right equipment for any job, big or small. Did you know that Sunbelt Rentals carries heaters, air conditioners, generators, lighting, traffic control, and so much more? So whether you're building it up or knocking it down, we've got the equipment you need. Get it done, rent it now. And right now, for a limited time, you can have it for less. Just by mentioning this ad, if you rent it Friday afternoon, you can keep it the whole weekend and only pay for one day. But this is a limited time offer, so stop into Sunbelt Rentals today, Northwest 27th, just a quarter mile east of I-75. For more information, just give us a call, 352-369-9101, 352-369-9101. Sunbelt Rentals. Get it done, rent it now. 352-369-9101.
Here is your 30-second news brief. The man accused of shooting a nurse in the leg at West Marion Community Hospital has been identified as 38-year-old Jason Ronald Gignac of Summerfield. A sinkhole opened yesterday at the east entrance to the Paddock Mall on Southwest 27th Street. A Florida Highway Patrol sergeant was hit and killed in the line of duty Saturday evening in Alachua County. President Trump is urging Governor Scott to run for the Senate, and American Idol will be holding auditions in Orlando in August. And that is your news brief from The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. London police call it a hate crime. A 48-year-old white man charged with plowing his van into Muslims leaving a prayer service, killing one and injuring 10.
Terrorism, extremism, and hatred take many forms.